A bridge, an armored column. All in the crosshairs of a plane no one thought could survive the fight. Smoke rolls across the river in thick, black curtains as Lieutenant Hal Stevens brings the wounded Thunderbolt around in a wide arc. His hands tremble on the controls. His engine growls unevenly now. Shrapnel from the flak hits rattles somewhere deep inside the frame. But the machine holds together, as if refusing to die. Ahead of him, through the haze, the steel outline of the supply bridge rises like a skeleton over the water. And crawling across it are tanks. Real armor. Not trucks. Not fuel carriers. A full armored column grinding its way toward the front. Stevens' eyes narrow. Panzer IVs. Half-tracks. Flak towers welded onto flatbed cars. A rolling fortress. If that column crosses, the German defense line stabilizes. If it doesn't, the valley collapses. He dives lower, skimming above the river. Spray dances along the underside of his wings. The engine roars, coughing only once. A harsh metallic choke, before catching again. Ahead, German officers on the bridge realize what's coming. One points upward, screaming orders lost in the thunder of engines. The Thunderbolt is coming straight for them. They throw everything at him. A mounted Panzer IV pivots its turret and fires a high-explosive shell that detonates far to Stevens' right. A half-track with a quad-mounted flak-Vierling 38 sprays the sky with a glittering wall of tracers. Bullets streak upward in perfect vertical lines, trying to cage him in. Stevens doesn't break. He can't. He's already too low, too committed. The steel bridge fills his windscreen. "Come on, girl," he whispers to the Thunderbolt. "Just give me one more run." He levels out, impossibly low, his belly barely clearing the river. The German gunners fire frantically, shouting over the metallic scream of the flak-Vierling. Shells burst around him, showering the water with white fountains. One round slams into his left wing, tearing away a chunk of metal. The whole aircraft lurches sideways. For an instant, he thinks he's going in. But the Thunderbolt answers. The heaviest fighter in the war rolls itself upright, fighting gravity with sheer brute strength. Stevens bites down, hard. He's lined up now, perfectly. He squeezes the triggers. The remaining .50 caliber guns erupt in a final, furious volley. The recoil shoves the Thunderbolt backward, almost like it's trying to halt the dive. Tracers slice across the bridge supports, punching through steel beams as if they were soaked paper. Then, flash. A fuel truck halfway across the span detonates, engulfing two Panzer IVs in a roiling fireball. Heat smashes upward, slapping Stevens' canopy like an open palm. The bridge sways. Sparks shower off the undercarriage as bullets ricochet off steel. But the real blow comes a heartbeat later. The main support column buckles. One of the tanks crashes sideways, treads spinning uselessly in empty air. The entire central section groans. A long, metal scream that echoes off the valley walls, and collapses. The bridge folds inward like a dying beast, sending armor, fuel, and men plunging into the river below. Stevens pulls up hard. The Thunderbolt barely responds. He's too low, too slow. The river rushes toward him. Then the engine roars. One last surge, and the plane claws upward, skimming the surface by inches. Behind him, the bridge burns. A pillar of smoke climbs into the sky like a funeral pyre. German survivors stagger along the riverbank, staring up at the monster that destroyed their supply line, their armor, their bridge, alone. One soldier mutters shakily, "Was ist das für ein Flugzeug?" What kind of aircraft is that? No one answers. Stevens doesn't look back. He doesn't have the fuel. He doesn't have the ammo. He barely has an airplane. But he does have one last enemy waiting for him. Because high above the valley, waiting like circling hawks, the two Messerschmitt Bf 109 pilots who mocked him at altitude are diving again. And this time, they're angry. The Luftwaffe thought they could finish him, but the flying brick had other plans. The valley trembles with the roar of engines as the two Bf 109s push down from above, diving in tight formation, their noses glinting in the sun. Oberleutnant Fischer and his wingmen have regrouped, teeth clenched, eyes burning with frustration. Their prey, the flying brick that defied all reason, has just obliterated a bridge and an armored column, and now they intend to finish him. Stevens glances over his shoulder, scanning the treetops. The P-47 feels sluggish, its damage from the flak still rattling through the fuselage. But he doesn't panic. He knows something the Germans do not. The Thunderbolt may be heavy, but that weight is its secret weapon. The Messerschmitts close in, expecting to overpower him with agility. They dive faster, weaving through the remaining smoke and debris, confident that the big American can't escape now. Fisher's radio crackles with commands, sharp and panicked. Block him! He can't get away. Stevens banks hard, the Thunderbolt shuddering as the wings flex under extreme stress. He dives toward the river again, skimming just above the surface, water spraying against the landing gear. Fisher follows, but his nimble fighter shakes violently, struggling to match the P-47's momentum. Now the hunters begin to realize the truth. The Thunderbolt isn't just surviving their attacks. It's forcing them to react. Its 8.50 caliber guns still have rounds left. Its engine, massive and roaring, pushes it through dives no other fighter could sustain. It's not a lumbering brute. It's a predator. Stevens rolls into a climb at the last possible moment, banking toward a narrow canyon. The Messerschmitts pursue, unaware of the danger below. Suddenly, the canyon narrows, cliffs rising on either side. Fisher tightens his formation, realizing he has no room to maneuver. One sharp turn and he could be in the rock face. The Thunderbolt dives into the canyon first, using its weight to accelerate past obstacles the Bf-109s cannot. Tracers from the Germans whip past, clipping rocks and sparks flying off the cliff walls. Fisher yells into the radio, "Break off! Break off!" But pride and adrenaline keep him pressing forward, even as the canyon crushes his options. Stevens glances back. One German has already pulled too tight on a turn and nearly clips the canyon wall. The other is banking too steeply, losing airspeed. Both are now fighting gravity as much as they are fighting him. The realization hits Fisher hard. The American plane he mocked as a tractor with wings is now dictating the battle. He's the one reacting, improvising, struggling to survive. Fear creeps into his chest, a fear he has never known in the skies. The P-47 climbs out of the canyon like a phantom, heavy engine roaring, wings slicing the air. Behind him, the Messerschmitts emerge shakily, battered, and forced to abandon the chase. Fisher glares, anger and disbelief contorting his face. Stevens levels off over a ridge, heart pounding, body exhausted, but alive. The valley below is in ruins. A destroyed bridge, burning vehicles, terrified German troops. And the Thunderbolt? It has become more than a machine. It has become a legend in metal and fire, a nightmare whispered across the Western Front. And somewhere far behind enemy lines, German commanders begin to take note. Reports are filed. Stories are whispered in mess halls and on airfields. The Americans have a new fighter, and it is unstoppable. But Stevens doesn't know that. Not yet. He's only thinking about one thing, getting home, and surviving to fly another day. Because for the pilots who mocked the P-47 at the start, the lesson is now painfully clear. The hunters have become the hunted. From mockery to legend, the Thunderbolt proved that size, power, and courage could change the course of war. Stevens banks hard over the ridge, the valley below a chaotic inferno of smoke, fire, and twisted metal. The smell of burning fuel and scorched earth rises in his memory like a ghost, one that will haunt the Germans for months to come. But for now, he is alive. And more than that, he is untouchable. Across the Western Front, word begins to spread. First in whispers, then in reports filed in hurried handwriting by panicked German officers. A single American fighter destroyed an entire bridge and convoy. 8.50 caliber guns. Impossible speed, unstoppable in a dive. The phrase "flying brick" loses its mockery. It becomes a warning, a symbol of terror. Even Fisher, sitting in a makeshift field office hours later, traces the destruction across a map. He stares at the valley, imagining the fire, the explosions, the sound of steel ripping apart. He mutters to himself, disbelief heavy in his tone. If one plane can do this, what next? The P-47 was more than an aircraft. It was a weapon born of impossible engineering, an American answer to the Luftwaffe's arrogance. Its radial engine, massive fuselage, and unmatched durability allowed it to dive, fire, and recover in ways the Germans had never anticipated. And the pilots who learned to master it, Stevens and others like him, turned raw power into artistry in the air. Back in the United States, engineers at Republic Aviation would never hear the details of this particular sortie. They didn't need to. They only knew the plane they built, heavy, lumbering, and mocked by European experts, was reshaping the war. It was punching above its weight, rewriting what air combat meant. Meanwhile, the German troops on the ground began their own terrifying lessons. Supply lines that once seemed secure were suddenly vulnerable. Every bridge, every rail line, every fuel train could be shredded by the unseen, roaring thunderbolt above. Morale faltered. Officers whispered in mess halls. Soldiers trembled at the sound of an approaching engine that was unmistakable once you knew it. Heavy, loud, and deadly. And for Stevens, flying low above the countryside, the valley behind him smoldering in chaos, there was a quiet satisfaction. Not pride, not arrogance, just the knowledge of survival and the awareness that his plane, once the subject of ridicule, had become a force of awe and fear. The flying brick had proven itself. The Luftwaffe had learned the hard way that weight and bulk were not weaknesses. Durability, speed in a dive, and raw firepower could turn the tide of battle. This was only the beginning. Over the coming months, the Thunderbolt would tear through enemy convoys, fuel trains, armored columns, and fortifications across France. Each sortie was a story of terror for the Germans and triumph for the Allies. And each time a flying brick appeared over the horizon, panic followed in its wake. Stevens banks east, heading toward base. The sun begins to dip behind the horizon, casting long shadows across a devastated valley. In the distance, smoke rises in thin spirals, a mark of destruction left in the name of survival. The legend of the P-47 Thunderbolt had begun, and somewhere in Germany, Oberleutnant Fischer would hear of it again, in reports, in rumors, in whispers across the command lines. And he would remember this day. The day a plane he mocked became the nightmare of his supply lines, the bane of his units, and the undeniable proof that the Allies had a weapon he could not conquer. The war in the skies had changed forever. If you think one plane couldn't change the battlefield, watch closely next time a Thunderbolt appears. Do you think the Luftwaffe ever figured out a way to counter the P-47, or was it truly unstoppable? Comment below what you think. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more unbelievable World War II stories.